Welcome to Crime Most French, a fortnightly podcast covering intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast All Alliance. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
This is episode 58, The Voodoo Connection. A whole family goes missing. Nobody knows where they are. Is it voodoo? Or could it also be plain greedy murder?
Voodoo.
Voodoo.
Okay, this is a new one for us.
Yes. On the 23rd of September 1995, Gilberte Crovisier, 44 years old, subway employee in Paris, receives a phone call. It's her son-in-law's mother. She says that she tried to reach her son, Donald Davila, but can't get an answer. It's 1995, so no mobile phones, no smart anything, so landline.
Yeah, but it's 1995, kind of like modern enough to know that voodoo is hokum.
Yeah, but it still happens now. Donald's mom explains that the previous Wednesday, Donald hadn't come to see her as he normally does. He goes and sees her every Wednesday.
Now, I've lived in France for 12 years, and in my time, more than a decade, I have never come across a French dude named Donald.
Well, there's one there.
That seems very unusual.
They all have weird names.
Okay.
You'll see.
Okay.
He never misses a visit on Wednesday.
All right. So he's a mummy's boy then?
Yeah, he must be, yes. Normally, Stephanie, who's 21, she's his wife, comes with him to the visit, and she takes the two kids.
Right, okay, so it's a young family, and they're probably going there for the grandkids' visit rather than just his. Okay, fair enough.
There's a 3-year-old and a 22-month-old.
Right.
So she's worried that it's been several days now, and she still hasn't heard from them.
Right, okay.
So she's now calling the mum, the wife's mum. On the 25th of September, so we're talking 2 days later, still without news, Gilberte goes to her daughter's house. It's in Volpenil. It's east of Paris.
Right, okay. So we're talking the grandmothers are now kind of like mustering into action.
Yes. Well, one of them does.
Yes.
The other one...
The other one was a bit laissez-faire.
Yes. The other one is the whistleblower and then waits. And the wife's mother is the one that does stuff. So she goes to Volpenil. We used to have a house there when I was a kid. It's very posh. But when she gets to the town, remember she's a subway employee, so she took the train.
Yep.
She has a bad feeling. So instead of going straight to the house, because she's not driving, so she needs to find a taxi and all that, she decides to stop at her daughter's workplace, which is close to the station, and ask if anything has seen her in the last few days. She had recently started a new job working at a middle school in Melun. Melun is the nearest big city, is the capital of the department, 77.
Right.
There, she's told by the concierge, all schools had concierge when I was a kid, apparently still in 95, that not seeing her for a few days, he had already been to the house. Because he was worried. The concierge were really handling the doors and everything at schools, and they knew everybody. So if one of the people working in the school didn't turn up for a couple of days, they would know. And he obviously decided to try to investigate.
Did they wear a uniform with like heaps of brightly coloured, brightly buffed buttons and had a hat?
No, there was no. There was a uniform when my mum was a kid.
Okay.
But when I was a kid, they didn't have uniforms. They just had a small flat in the school.
Right.
And they were essentially in charge of keeping an eye on the school and making sure that nothing happened at the weekend.
So he'd be opening the doors for all the kids. You'd be feeling fabulously important to have a door opened for you.
Well, you opened it once, all the kids went in. You didn't do it per kid. Because in some schools, in my school, which was a very small school, we probably had about 1,000 kids. But in some schools, you had 10,000, and that would be crazy.
Yeah, I'm laughing at you inside my head. And remember, I was in primary school in Fife. 1,000 kids. I think even if you'd put all the primary schools in Dunfermline, that wouldn't have added to 1,000, let alone one.
It was Paris for me, so
yeah.
And it was the 13th district, so it was a lot of kids.
It's just so bizarre having a concierge on a school door. That's just weird.
I assume they don't exist anymore, but
No.
they obviously still existed in 95, which I'm surprised, because for me it was early 80s.
How much danger money would a concierge
No
demand if that happened in the States?
A lot. No, you don't want to be a concierge in the US. So anyway, he had already been there.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got there, he was met by a big black dude who told him that Stephanie had gone on holiday with her family.
During school time, tut-tut, that's very frowned upon.
He knew it was impossible
Yeah.
because she has just started work.
Mm.
Plus, why would she not tell anyone? So he knew it wasn't right. But there's nothing he could do about it.
I try to seem to remember you get fined, don't you, if you take your kids out of school for going on holiday?
Yes. And it was just the start of the year because we were talking late September. So they had gone back to school as well.
Raunchy.
Yeah, you get fined. I can't remember how much it is, but you get fined if your kids don't go to school for no good reason.
My favourite time of year.
Yes. So Gilbert knew that her daughter would never do that. And
so she was called Gilbert. Everyone has bizarre names in this story.
Yes.
Everyone has.
That's just the way they are.
That's very much a French way of just approaching names. Is we'll shove an E on the end and it can be the ladies' version.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we had a lovely old lady that used to live, sadly, who's died now, but she was called Raymond, for goodness sake.
Yes.
Raymond with an E, Raymond.
Yes.
Very bizarre.
So she knows something's going on because her daughter would never do that.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't bother taking the bus to Volpénil, and she goes straight to the gendarmerie.
Something smelt bad.
Yeah, something smelled bad. There was no point going further.
Yeah.
Something had happened. So she wanted to report her daughter missing. There, she's told that her daughter is an adult, and she's allowed to disappear if she wants to, as we've already talked about. Then there was nothing they could do.
Surely she's not allowed to disappear with her kids.
She is allowed to go anywhere she wants with her kids. If it had been just her and not the kids, maybe. Or if it had been the kids and not her, maybe. But she's the mother and she can go anywhere she wants with her kids. She might be fined because she's not allowed to take her kids off school. But they're very young. They're 3 and 20 months old. So one wouldn't go to school and one might have started. I started at 3, but not all kids do.
No.
You have to start at 6. That's compulsory. But before that, doesn't have to. So they might not have been to school anyway. So no, there was nothing they could do because she's allowed to disappear and go on holiday if she wants to. And if it means missing work, it means missing work. It's not their problem. There's nothing they could do. There's nothing bad happening.
That just seems totally crazy when you have a logistic feeling that someone is missing under suspicious circumstances.
Yeah, but you're allowed to go missing if you want to. Or you're allowed to go away and not tell your mum. That's just the way it is. So that's what they told her, and they told her to go back. And in fact, the story is a bit longer than that because they jerked her around a little bit by making her go to another station where she lived instead of where the daughter lived. And there they told her, no, that's nothing to do with us. And
you have to go back to the other.
Yeah, so they did that, but eventually, in the end, there's nothing they could do, and there's nothing they would do.
Oh, I mean, that's just hugely frustrating for that poor woman.
Oh, yeah, totally, especially when she's certain something happened.
Yeah.
So she goes home, but she decided that she wouldn't give up. So the next Monday, she comes back with her son, so her daughter's brother, and her boyfriend, and they go to the house. And they get there by about 5 p.m., when they get to the property, they see the 2 family cars parked in the driveway. Right. So they're pretty sure that they didn't go on holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Because even if they took the train, most likely they would have taken the car and lifted it into the station. That's what we used to do. Mm-hmm. So they're pretty sure something other happened. She knocks on the door. There's no answer. Her son gets in through the window and opens the door from inside. Nothing is right in the house as soon as they get in. All the shoes are lined up in the hall. The kids' toys and nappies are all over the house. And in the living room, which is super humid, as if someone had done a lot of cleaning, the heater is running full blast to get rid of the humidity.
In September, you wouldn't have the heating full blast. Not even...
In September, you wouldn't have the heating at all. But it's so humid, it's just wet everywhere. somebody switched on the heating to get rid of the humidity.
Mm. This is when we need the luminol and the blue light.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Gilbert doesn't understand what's happening. Her daughter had everything to be happy. She didn't have much money, that's true, but since 1991 she had been living with Donald, a musician from the Windies. I couldn't find out if he was from Martinique or Guadeloupe, but one of the two. Nobody ever said which one it was.
Okay, so that now explains the bizarre name then.
Could be, maybe. Don't know.
Donald is when I think Donald, I mean, I just instantly start singing "Donald, where's your trousers" in my head. It is a very Scots name.
Yeah. Her daughter had met him in a bar where he was playing with his band.
Right.
And she had fallen under the charm very quickly. Apparently he was the guitar and drum player.
Right.
Presumably not at the same time.
He could have easily appeared in Death in Paradise then.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah.
And they quickly moved in together.
Right.
After a short period living with Donald's parents in Mona, they had looked for a place of their own.
Mm-hmm.
For them, that was an abandoned field behind the bar where Donald had been playing. It was the next shooting range. It was about 4,000 square meters of land, so 40,000 square feet. It was the owner of the bar that had mentioned it to Donald, because that thing had been abandoned for years and years and years. And he said,
right.
Well, that's where you could go and live. So they had gone to the mairie, although I've seen two different stories about this one. One is they went to the mairie, town hall, and they asked if they could rent it. And the mayor said, nobody cares about that, if you'll just go. Do whatever you want, we don't care. Another one is they just moved in,
right,
and they were told that they would have to move out because it had been sold. But in that story, nothing happened in 91, 92, 93, 94, 95.
Right.
So obviously, if it had been sold, it was bought by someone who was not interested in it, which is kind of weird because it would have been fairly expensive land. It's very close to Mona. And Volpenil is a very posh town. So I don't think that's the story. I think the story more likely is they went to the mairie and the mairie owned it and had absolutely no use for it, didn't want to spend money on it.
No.
So they just told him, just use it, we don't care. So anyway, they move in. There was an old stone house on the field.
Right, that was a missing. I thought, what, were they living in a tent for 5 years?
No, it was a shooting range, so you had a building,
right,
to store equipment and whatever. So they worked on it, they renovated it, and they moved in. In 92, they had their first child, Donald Jr.
Of course.
A year later, they had Donatella.
Oh my God, this guy's got an ego on him.
A little bit, yes.
George Foreman 1, George Foreman 2.
Yes.
Good Lord.
Yes. So for them, it's the perfect house because the kids can play outside. It's fairly isolated from anybody else, so no need to worry about all the pedophiles in the street.
No, yes.
Donald can play as loud as he wants because the only nearest building is a bar, so who cares?
What instrument did you say he played?
Guitar and drums.
Oh God!
And he has a band as well,
yes.
So they would come and rehearse with him. Yeah, they would practice with him. So it was the perfect house because nobody would hear them, or the people who wouldn't care.
So they seem happy, reasonably structured life then.
Yeah, and she liked to sit at the window and watch the river, the Seine.
Well, who wouldn't?
So yeah, it was the perfect house for them, and they got it for free. They just needed to fix it.
Jammy goods.
It's not a great house.
Okay.
There will be photos on the website. It's not great,
You
but you can live in it.
It's not got great curb appeal.
No, it's very small.
Right.
It's not it was essentially a shack. It probably was a shack at some point, and it had been rebuilt in stone.
Right.
But it gives you an idea of what kind of house it is. So it is quite small. It's not a huge house where you would want to live.
So basically, you would need, for all the audiences out there, you would need either Ty Pennington, Nick Knowles, or Stefan Plaza to come and fix it up for you. Okay.
Yeah. So they did it themselves anyway.
Right.
So that's their house, and they're happy in it, and everything's fine. So that's why she doesn't understand why her daughter would have disappeared.
Yeah, because
she didn't have much money, but she had a house, she had kids, she had a job, everything was fine.
And they were settled there, and they put a lot of effort into it. Yes, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, their life wasn't entirely straightforward. Sometimes Stephanie and Donald had arguments. Sometimes there was a lot of shouting. Gilbert wondered if maybe Donald killed her and the kids and then disappeared.
I would find it very hard to believe that there was a musician who was a complete unhinged, crazy kind of like drug-taking.
Yes. So, obviously, like all mothers, they don't really like their son-in-law necessarily. So she doesn't entirely trust him. So for a while she thought, maybe it's him. Maybe he did it and then just disappeared.
Yeah.
But she decides to talk to people who knew him. And at first she doesn't find anybody because it's middle of the week. People are not there. They were working.
Yeah.
So she knocks at doors and nobody's there. But eventually she talks to one or two of his friends and they say, no, they haven't heard. And also he would never do that. Yes, he can argue, but it's not violent.
Right.
So she decides, okay, if they're right, then it's not him.
So he's chilled.
Yes.
As well as being just a bit spicy, as the millennials say.
She goes back to the house, and it's now dark, and they see light in the windows. So somebody's in. So they thought, okay, they're back for some reason. So her son runs to the house, thinking that his sister's back. But when he gets to the door, he finds himself face to face with a big black dude. He's called Edgar Boulet. They don't know who he is. They've never heard of him. Never seen him. And behind him, they see a blonde woman who doesn't talk, doesn't say anything, but approves everything Edgar says.
Is she working him from behind, is she?
They don't know. They don't know if she just agrees because she has to agree, or if she agrees because she does agree, or they don't know. They have no idea who she is, but she stays behind and doesn't talk to them. But
it is all kind of weird that you go to your daughter's, your grandkid's house, and
find a stranger.
You're met with two entire, completely unknown strangers.
Yes, exactly. That's not normal. That shouldn't happen.
No.
So Boulet seems surprised and a little bit scared to see people at his door. Gilbert isn't impressed.
No.
So she starts questioning him. So who are you? Where's my daughter? What are you doing here?
Yeah, what the hell, man?
And he explains that the family left in a white van and Donald had given him the keys to house it. Then he told them to leave and not come back unless they're invited. He has a gun. So they leave. They don't ask questions. But the son wants to come back and keep an eye on them and see what's going on.
Yeah, that is well fishy. My money is getting the police to interview them. Be nipping around there and asking a few questions.
Yeah, but they wouldn't because they have no reason to. That's the problem. They can't do that. So the months pass by. Nothing happens, obviously, because the gendarmerie doesn't want to get involved. And Gilbert can't get help from anybody. She tries to put posters around Melun. She contacts the press, and their answer is the same as the gendarmerie. Your daughter can disappear if she wants to. There's nothing we can talk about here.
That's just crazy.
She even writes to the president. And I read the letter, and it's kind of funny because she knew he would never read it. So she talks to the people who open his mail and say, I know you're not going to give it to the president, but I would like you to hear me anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that poor woman.
So she writes to them, and of course nothing happens. Again, they told her the same thing, that she can disappear if she wants. There's nothing they can do.
And there's no podcasts to...
No, not yet. In 95, no.
No.
So in the meantime, Boulet still lives in the house. He repaints it. And he still receives the blonde woman that is called Monique. Turns out to be his mistress, but you will guess that.
Yeah.
Gilbert is certain that it has something to do with the disappearance of his daughter and son-in-law and grandkids, but she can't prove it. One day, in June 96, so we're talking nearly a year later, 10 months later, she still goes around the house regularly, and she notices that the two family cars are gone. So she knocks at the door, and Boulet tells her that he sold them because they were occupying the garden for no good reason. So now she has an in because now she declares them stolen.
Stolen, yeah.
Because they're not his.
No.
He can't sell them.
No.
her son-in-law and daughter are not there to sign papers, so they have been stolen. So at that point, the gendarmerie decides to, yes, okay, look into it, because now it's a car theft and now they can do something about it.
Ludicrous.
Yes. So they look for the owners of the cars, and they're not there. So they decide to look into where they are, because they need to know if the sale has been approved. And in doing so, they have to admit that, yes, they have disappeared. At that point, Boulay happens to be in prison for DUI. So it's not the first time. He has been convicted before of various acts of violence, including against policemen. And even a rape attempt. That's the last time he went to prison.
Oh, he sounds like a prince.
In fact, when he moved into the house after the disappearance of the family, he was just out of prison after the rape attempt, and he had no job, nowhere to live. So the police decided to take him out of his cell, take him to the house, and search the house. Once in the house, they noticed a number of strange things. First, they noticed that the carpet has been cut in several places, so there's holes in the carpet.
Right.
The walls have been hastily laid with plaster in places, and it looks like it's been not done by a professional.
Right, okay.
It's like there was damage there and somebody tried to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
There was blood marks visible on walls, but Boulay says it's his. Along the windows, they find rows of baby food pots, and the gendarmes are sure that this is voodoo.
Why?
Because apparently you can feed the soul of the dead so that they don't come and haunt you.
Right.
So there must have been somebody in the gendarmerie who knew about voodoo, because they went straight there.
Right, okay.
So also in the house, they discover a voodoo mask of Papa Hugo, whoever that is. Oh, again, one of the gendarmes must have been from the Windies, because there must have been somebody who knew those things, otherwise it's just a mask.
Mm.
Apparently, witnesses say that the mask didn't exist at the time the Davilas lived in the house. So it is Bouley's mask.
They weren't into voodoo.
They weren't into voodoo, no. Also, when they go around the house, as they walk near a small stone shed, Boulay looks very worried and starts sweating profusely. They suspect something happened there. So to put pressure on him, because he's a big black dude who's not going to talk, they arrest the girlfriend.
Right.
They're pretty clear very quickly that she has nothing to do with it, or at least that's what they think.
Mm.
But they decide to put pressure on her so that he gets the pressure. So they start questioning her quite hard. And at some point, she admits that the story she's been feeding them is what Boulay told her.
Right.
He wrote to her from prison and told her what to say to the Ruzzers.
Did they not check what...
I was surprised by that, but apparently not.
That seems a bit...
I don't know. In
that
France,
seems a
maybe
bit
you can,
loosey-goosey.
Yeah, maybe you can send mail in France from prison and nobody reads it. I really don't know.
Oh, that's crazy.
Or maybe it's filed and nobody checks it. I have no idea. But anyway, he had told her what to say.
Right.
And eventually she cracks and admits, yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
Mm.
So at that point, she says that she threw away the letter. So she can't show it to them.
Mm.
But she starts talking.
I don't think that would be a kind of letter you would keep about anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Just by its very nature.
Yes.
You need to back me up by saying this.
Yes, exactly.
It seems a bit foolish to keep it.
So she doesn't have it, but she starts talking.
Right.
And through her questioning and other witnesses, they kind of start piecing together what really happened to the family. So on the 15th of September, so we're talking
The rewinding
a week
night.
earlier.
Rewinding
Yes.
back to the previous year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Donald delivered some wood with a friend called Alain Isabelle. And it was about 7:30. Later on, he was asked if he could replace the bass player in a band called Rhiness. Rai is a North African style of music. It's kind of rapish.
Right.
You won't have heard it.
No.
It's very local to North Africa and I guess France as well. I heard a lot of it when I was a kid. It became popular in the mid-90s in France.
Right.
For the Fête de l'Humain. Fête de l'Humanité is the communist newspaper in France, and every year they have a music festival.
Right.
Fête de l'Humain, everybody knows. And
Right.
a lot of people have been. But he thinks about it for a while, but decides, nah, I'm not going to play. It's just, meh, I can't be bothered. So he decides to go as a spectator only.
Right. That seems a bit of a cunty move.
It wasn't his band.
No, but
So it was just has
to
to
be
help
there and not to lend a hand,
Yeah.
that seems a bit
Meh.
be a bit arsey.
Maybe. The next day, Stephanie's at work, and she tells about her evening and the party and everything to her colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And she leaves work at 2:30 and goes home where she meets a few of her friends. They're there for gossiping.
Because that's what ladies do.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Careful now.
But Boulet and Monique are there as well. So they know that dude. At some point in the afternoon, Boulet and Monique disappear to deliver a car stereo, apparently, to someone. When I say deliver, I have air bunnies around it. They stole it from someone and gave it to someone else.
I was going to say,
or
is
sold
this
it to someone else.
was it just resting?
Yeah, it
in
was
their
resting in
hands?
their boot. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure. So he was at the
At the house.
he was at the ladies' gossip corner.
Yes,
Right,
probably
okay.
because Monique was there.
Right.
So they come back eventually, and an argument takes place between Boulet and Donald. Nothing too bad, according to Monique, just a bit of shouting and posturing.
Right.
Later, at about 8 p.m., a neighbor on her porch hears another argument between two men. She recognizes Donald's voice, but she doesn't know who the other man is.
Right.
After about 10 minutes, she hears cars' doors and then silence. Another neighbor corroborated the story, saying that she also saw Boulet get in his car, furious, but it refused to start. So she saw him go in and out of the car and under the bonnet a few times until it eventually started and he left. Monique says that during a lot of that, she was locked up in the shed, asleep.
Sorry.
I know. that's weird, but that's her story. She said that she heard screaming and noises like an animal was getting its throat cut. Lambs or something, she says.
Was it 4 lambs by any chance?
4 lambs? Why 4 lambs?
Because there's 4 people missing.
Yeah, she wasn't specific, but she said that was a kind of noise,
Hmm.
which is kind of surprising because I wouldn't know what noise that makes.
In
She does.
the cops that weren't going, so you were locked in
Oh yeah, no, they do.
the shed?
Yeah, no, they don't believe her story for a second, but that's the one she sticks to, and they can't
Okay.
make her say anything else.
No.
So she said that she thought of Boulet's machete at that point, because he had a machete, and she was terrified, so she decided not to move. The next day, on the 17th, she goes home. So she's freed from the
unlocked.
shed.
She's unlocked from the shed,
She's
right?
unlocked from the shed, so she spent the night in the shed. Boulet is apparently seen again on the property on his own.
Mm.
He's also said to have spent a lot of that afternoon lying on the sofa, exhausted and very dirty, according to witnesses. The Davila family is never seen again at that point.
Hmm.
A few days later, Boulet starts the proceedings to declare the house his home address. Because he's a felon, so he probably had to declare his address.
Yes.
And according to neighbors, he puts his name on the mailbox on that day. Just a few days later.
It's really weird her story doesn't contain the white van that they
No.
turning up and them
No,
going away in
doesn't.
it.
No.
Weird that.
You read that, yeah. So before she's released, Monique tells the gendarmes, if you ask me about the death of the Davila family, they're buried in the garden at Volpenil.
Right, okay.
And then she's let go.
I mean, if I had been her, any time that dude was in prison, I would have been moving to Marseille, changing my name, having plastic surgery. He sounds like a thoroughly unpleasant, nasty man.
Oh, totally, yes. So a few days later, the gendarmerie decides to search the grounds. Because now they have a reason for it. Because she said something very interesting. So
get
they
the
go
cadaver
back.
dogs out.
Oh, they go with the digger. They're not wasting time with the dog.
All right, okay. Why bother locating exactly where it is when you could just go in with something to dig up the whole garden? I mean, it's a huge area.
Oh, it's 4,000 square meters.
Yeah.
That's a good garden, but they just go with the big digger and just decide, okay, we're going to dig.
Crack on then.
At some point, they find the carcass of a dead black hen Apparently, Boulay had, when he moved into the house, moved in with his hens, and their black hens. And when he saw that, he totally panics, and he demanded to be able to bury it. Again, the gendarmes say, yep, voodoo.
I was going to say, when is this going to come back to voodoo? How did they know it was black? Well, obviously it wasn't...
Oh, there were lots of feathers.
Oh,
Feathers
right,
don't
okay.
decompose. Well, they do, but very slowly.
Mm.
So, yeah, there was lots of feathers, so they knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So when the diggers approaches an area of the field where there's a pile of rubbish, Boulay changes color, apparently, and starts, again, sweating a lot. So the gendarmes know that something is going on there, and they start digging. And it doesn't take long, they find 4 bodies.
Oh.
The 2 kids are on the top, and the parents are lower under a mattress. So he dug a big hole, put the parents, put the mattress, put the kids, and put rubbish on top. And the bodies are also covered in animal carcasses and a lot of feathers. So he obviously killed some of his hens on top of the grave.
Was that a countermeasure to...
That probably is, yes.
It probably had nothing to do with voodoo. He was probably trying to cover the smell.
No. They think it is voodoo.
Right.
Well,
he thinks it's voodoo.
There's no point because the dogs would make the difference between
animal and
human blood anyway.
Decomposition, yeah.
So no, it's just that he wanted to do some ritual or something.
I mean, it doesn't matter, what's around it or not. That guy is clearly just pure undistilled evil.
Oh yeah, he's done it. There's no doubt at that point. They know he's done it. Now they need to prove it.
And it would have been super if you'd done it 9 months ago rather than putting those 2, mothers through just hell.
So to identify the bodies, the gendarmes show jewelry recovered from the bodies to Gilberte. And she says they were still covered in soil and mud.
Oh, come on, they might have cleaned
Didn't clean it, no.
Christ.
So at that point, even without them telling her why she's asked to identify it, she knows what happened and knows they're all dead.
Poor Gilbert. That's just so awful.
Yeah, the autopsies will show that the 2 kids had their skulls crushed against the walls of the house. Stephanie had her throat cut with 2 strikes of a machete, and Donald was disemboweled on his bed, probably with a machete as well.
Whoa. Oh, hence the reason the mattress was in the hole, presumably.
Yes. Yeah, it was probably just a pool of blood at that point.
Good Lord, that must have been an absolute bloodbath.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that makes your blood run cold.
But that's why you probably cleaned the house and it was so wet.
Oh, yeah.
Needed a lot of...
But not to a forensically clean.
No, of course not. No, it's not even properly clean because they actually found blood on the walls. So he didn't even do the job right. So he's arrested, obviously.
Where was it? We were watching one thing and the guy had used bleach. No, he hadn't used bleach.
Lots of stories.
He'd used acid.
Oh, yes, he used acid because he was watching
he was obsessed with CSI. The only thing he would watch on TV was CIS, and they found one tiny blood mark.
Behind the handle of the toilet. Yes. Well, I don't remember what that story was, but yes, he nearly got away with it.
Yeah, the guy was autistic, wasn't he? I mean, he was just completely, he should have been working in forensics. He was very fastidious. But, anyway, I digress.
Yes, anyway, so he's arrested, obviously. And goes to trial, no doubt. The prosecutor doesn't believe Monique's story for a second. He thinks that she's way more involved than what she says. Because her shed story is bullshit.
Although I have to say, he does sound like the kind of person who would lock someone in a shed.
And then let her go in the next morning
no,
to go to work. No, that's bullshit.
She would have been in the pit
probably.
With the family.
Yeah, but he can't prove it. So she is, for a short time, prosecuted for impeding an investigation because she wasn't. Well, she was telling lies to the others.
Yeah.
But she's let go free. For some reason, they just drop it. Gilberte appeals, and in the following years, against everybody's advice, she manages to get her convicted. She's convicted on the 14th of May 2002, so we're talking 7 years later, to 6 months in prison, 3 suspended.
Go for you.
So that's the grandmother who managed to get her convicted when everybody else said, just let her go, it doesn't matter. So she wouldn't.
No.
She wouldn't let go.
Good.
During the trial, so let's go back in time, Boulay doesn't say anything. He doesn't admit he's done anything. He just refuses to answer questions. Doesn't take part into the trial. So the prosecutor, because he's kind of short on confession and evidence linking, they can prove the murder.
Yes, but they can't prove it was him. No.
Because they never found the machete, and it will never be found. They have no idea where it is. So they can't prove that he's the one who's done the murders. They can prove that he probably was around. They can prove that he moved into the house afterwards, but they can't prove he killed anybody. So they rely...
It's highly likely, but they don't have a huge...
They don't have any proper evidence. So they rely entirely on witnesses. So a large part of the trial is the prosecutor telling the story as the witnesses have told it, as I told it earlier. The voodoo connection comes back in the trial because the animal carcasses, the mostly birds, and the feathers were found on top of the bodies. Apparently, Boulay had a voodoo guru called Wilfried from Haiti. Apparently, he's now living in Canada, who was providing him with voodoo artifacts and spells. So there was a very strong voodoo aspect in his life, and that explains a lot. So, for example, when he redid the concrete floor in the shed where Monique was locked up. Mm-hmm. But he made sure he drowned a rat in the concrete because that repulses bad spirits, apparently, according to his guru. So he was totally heavily into voodoo, and that explains everything, like the baby pots and everything, because that's a voodoo thing, apparently.
So in this instance, I mean, everyone always points to voodoo.
Yeah, but in that case, it was true. What he was doing had to do with voodoo.
But try saying voodoo guru 3 times quickly after 4 pints. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. So why did he kill the family?
Because he's a giant arse.
Well, apparently, the only thing they managed to get from witnesses about why he moved in is that he just wanted a house. And they were in the house. And he wanted them out, so he killed them.
Location.
Yeah, that's a super grand house. On the 16th of June 2000, after his trial, he's sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 18 years. And that means that he can be freed from 2018. After 23 years in prison, the justice system has just been considering releasing him.
Ah, that's what you were muttering about during the week.
Yes, because that for us, at the time of recording, it was 3 days ago.
Right.
He requested to be freed on parole in October 2022. The judge in charge of sentences didn't refuse. So that would have made him able to be freed under a number of conditions, and the conditions were not very harsh. One was that he had to have a job for 2 years, and he had to have a trial period of 1 year where he would have to report to the police and all that. And essentially, he's freed on parole. The prosecutor, who prosecuted the trial, immediately appealed to stop that, saying that there was way more negative elements in the story than positives on his side, and therefore there's absolutely no reason why he would be let out. His request was heard on the 18th of January, so 3 days ago for us. 36,000 people signed a petition against his release, and the judge denied it. So he's still in prison.
Well, the next time he's up for parole, I'll tell you, though I'll be putting out a podcast calling for the 4 people who probably listen to this, sign that petition. That guy should never be out on the streets in this country. Never.
Most likely he's going to try every year. Remember the case last week, Geronimo? He tried every year to be freed, and every year has been denied for the last more than 20 years. So most likely Boulay is going to do the same thing every year. When he's allowed to request at being free, he will do it again.
He crushed a baby's skull. He should never, ever... He is clearly unhinged and should never be out in the streets.
Oh yeah, totally.
Whew. So here we go. I think the moral of the story this week is Never underestimate the power of a mother's love.